Hello everyone, and welcome to another Gear Talk. We do these every other Thursday at 5. As always, I'm your host, Cody Booker, the great one himself, the knowledge master of all of Gears. And today we're doing another My Thoughts video. So, my thoughts on, and instead of the comic series, I normally do these at the end of the entire series we do, this will just be my thoughts on Hollows. I figured we could just do some mini ones sprinkled here and there and just cover everything kind of, and then at the very end of everything, we'll just do an overall my thoughts on the comics. So just this one is just my thoughts on Hollows. Just a smaller video just talking about my thought of this section of the comics and what I thought about the story, characters, and just some of the things that went on. So yeah, right into it. My thoughts on Gears of War Hollows. For anyone who does not know about the My Thoughts videos I do at the end of my series, basically this is just no notes, no script, nothing at all. I just turn the camera on and we just go over my thoughts. That's all we do. Just a very quick, off-the-cuff, what I'm thinking about moment. So, Hollows. This is the first comic series that they ever did do for Gears of War, and I think when it comes to Hollows, it's okay. It's not bad. It's not good. I think it's fine. I think it's an alright comic series. So I guess it's not good. It is good, but it's not like the gravity of like the big storytelling you get from later on other series you get. Like for instance, Baron that we'll be coming up to, that one is very well done. The Hivebuster stories way later on, that was well done. Rise of Rom is very well done. But then you have some stories that are a little bit weaker as you go. The Pendulum Wars anthology series it's all right. It's fine. If you look at it as a huge setting of stories, If you look at it individually, okay. And then you have one-offs like One Day, which in my opinion I'm not the biggest fan of One Day. I think it could have been done better. But overall, it's like middle of the racetrack. It's okay. Hollows does have a lot of good things going for it. This is like the first time we meet like Jace in general with the release of all the media we got. This was Jace's first appearance. Jace was meant to be, for the comics at least, the main character we always followed. So this is where we get Jace, and for anyone who has followed the channel before, or like my opinions of Jace, you do know that like when it comes to Hollows, I've used a lot of the Hollow source material to cover a lot of videos involving Barrick, Jace, the overall stories for these characters. We've covered a lot of it, and now we've done the whole run through for Hollows. So I've done a lot of digging into Hollows. I even said at the beginning of the series, I wasn't even sure I was going to cover Hollows because I've talked about it so much. But I figured if we're going to do the entire comic series, we got to cover Hollows. So we did, and overall, not bad. Jace was introduced here. We got a lot of characters that were first time introduced here. For instance, we got Gil Gonzalez, the pseudo-dom to Jace's Marcus, kind of. We got Barrick, one of the most badass characters, one of my favorite characters of all time in Gears, was introduced in Hollows. And we really did get a good look at the planet Sarah with how they had to go from the beginning of the story to Jacinto. They had to go through the Dorado Highlands. They had to go through everything, get to Montevado. It was a good journey. Honestly, it gave me the feelings of like 3, where we had to journey throughout Sarah, or 5. 5 was a bit of a journey too. But 3 was really that feeling of like the journey that we were taking, and I did enjoy the storytelling that we were getting. So Hollows was okay. Some downsides to it is that there are some chapters, or at least some issues, that really didn't flow well. The biggest one that comes to mind, if I remember correctly, it was issue number 3, where there was an entire story and an entire situation, an entire battle that was completely off-screen with like one panel, which I wasn't the biggest fan of, and that was when they were defending the city of Freakity Deakity Duke. I can't say that on YouTube or else demonetization in the future, all of that. So there was an entire fight where it was like a squad versus squad, the Gears versus Locust, and they just offhandedly just covered it, where like we did a great job beating them. It was a monstrous stomp, and you just see the dead bodies of the Locust, where that could have been an entire story in it of itself we could have seen, but we just didn't get. I feel like there was some stuff also that kind of like really slowed up the pace we were going with, like with Lily introduced. Lily kind of slowed a lot of things up with Jace kind of playing the Guardian Protector. Even at one point, I believe it was the next chapter after that, they gave them over to Sigma Squad. They gave Lily to her, where they're like, just take her back to Jacinto. We gotta get this story moving along a little quicker. So that happens. Overall, like, the subtleties of the chapters were pretty good. The issues, I feel like Jace as a character introduced here was fine. You do get a lot more wonky stuff with his continuity, but this is the first that ever got released, so a lot of things didn't get retconned. This was like the original before retconning happened. So there's quite a few things. I even read interviews later on that people did with content that came out later on with Jason Barrick where they're like, yeah, like there can be a lot of ways to interpret how it happened. So I know I should be talking about the story itself, but it really is just that, like, your middle story. It's okay. I did enjoy how we at least got the story moving along when you didn't have things like the skipped parts, or you had like Lily, where it really was like an adventure, where you had Marcus leading his gears to go on a mission. So they go on helicopter, it gets shot down, and they're like, okay, now we got to figure out how to get there on foot. They travel for a while, they make it to one of the cities, they're able to ride an APC vehicle, and then that gets destroyed, then they ride motorcycles. And I felt it was a really good way to just kind of like, we're journeying. But at the same time, there were parts of it that were really sped up or slowed down. So it was your typical like adventure story. I can't really think of much else to talk about. I guess we can talk about the impact that these comics had in the future. We could talk about. So Hollows does in fact have a bigger impact in the future because this does lay the groundwork for Jace and Barrick's relationship and how they know one another, and how even all the way up till 5, you have it where Jace still carries around Barrick's lighter that he actually ended up still holding on to after the events of Gears of War 3, Rom Shadow or Shadow of Rom. He still carried on to that. Like, they were very well acquainted with one another. And this comic, even though they act like they don't know each other that much because of continuity issues, it is very nice to see them in action together, not just as like a child and a gear, but two gears that are fighting side by side now. Speaking of Barrick, actually, like I said, this is where we get introduced to Barrick for the first time release-wise, and it has one of the most badass scenes in all of Gears of War, not just the comics, but all of Gears of War, and this is Barrick's last stand. So for people who only play the games, you don't really know what happens to Barrick after the events of Gears of War 3. You just hear or see in the descriptions that he is dead. So how did he go out? Well, the comics show you how Barrick passed, and it is by far one of the most badass scenes. It is so amazing. It adds a lot of lore to things too, like with Rustlung. You do get more people from the Lifeboat Initiative, Barrick in general, and you really do get to see a lot of things fleshed out on Barrick's side of things. And Barrick doesn't talk that much in the comics, really. He's there. He's kind of like the same character that Ty played in Rom Shadow, where he's kind of just there. He talks and he interacts and he does things, but he really is just that fourth gear that's with them after Gil dies. He's the one that takes Gil's place, and it is very nice to see him, and you do get him to talk about Rustlung a little more before you get to 2. This is the most we get of Rustlung, so I enjoyed it. I thought it was really nice seeing Barrick kind of like, I'm the grizzled vet, even though he's not. He was a part of the Lifeboat Initiative, but he's like, I'm more the grizzled, older generation that's fighting alongside Marcus Phoenix, Dominic Santiago, Jace Stratton, Gil Gonzalez, and my job's kind of just to be the muscle. And the muscle he is. Because of that Rustlung, he is literally ripping Locust in half with his bare hands. Bringing up some other characters, I guess we can talk a little bit about Gil, because Gil does not come up that often in the comics. In fact, really, this is like his biggest shining moment, since he's in multiple issues of Hollows, whereas when later on you get Operation Midnight, he's only in Operation Midnight that one story, because it's a one-off story for Operation Midnight. So you do get introduced to Gil Gonzalez, which was kind of, like I said earlier, the Dom to Jace's Marcus. So they both went through, like, basic together, they went through together, and if you go by the story of Gears overall, now and then they would end up in the same squad together or get separated, but they would always fight side by side, Jace and Gil, which is where we have Operation Midnight, they're fighting side by side, and then you have Hollows, they're back together, and they're both a part of Delta. They're both somewhat newer, so it is kind of sad to see Gil go, because of the fact that Gil isn't just killed off like your random run-of-the-mill helmeted cog. No, he actually does fight alongside them, get some character progression, get to hang out with everybody, and his death it's not drawn out, but it is to the point where, like, you feel sad seeing Gil go. So I thought that was very well done for the series, at least for Hollows. Gil's character was done well for what it was. So when Gil does pass on, you do at least feel the weight of Gil leaving. They bring him back, which is a very rare thing in the cog, to bring your dead back from the battlefield. We learned this in 4, where they talk to Marcus, and it's basically like, when they died, we never got the bodies to bring back. We would have a war going on here. Like, there were so many people dying, we were going to do that later. We at least got their tags. So it was a big thing to see them actually bring Gil back whole, not even just like, in pieces or anything, like a certain Carlos Santiago, they brought him back. So it was very nice. We see how the memorials and the funerals are kind of done for the Cog during the Locust War. That was very interesting on how they burn their dead, with the idea of we would never put them in the ground to go where these monsters are coming from. We'd rather burn them where at least they can rise to heaven. That idea. I thought that was very well done. The journey, like I said, was good. Marcus and Dom are Marcus and Dom. There's not a lot of real crazy things that separate them from how they normally are. Yeah, I guess you see a little bit more of Marcus and how he acts in his downtime when he's not a soldier. He really does do what you expect Marcus to do. He kind of just goes off by himself. He kind of just goes and broods around somewhere like the bar, and you have his friends or Anya that have to go find him to hang out with him. He's never really just one to go and find someone to hang out with. He's kind of just doing his own thing. Classic Marcus Phoenix. Dom, we learn more about Jace learning about Dom and how he spent all his time finding Maria, but Dom is still Dom at the end of the day. And that's about it for the characters. The characters were all done either very well or just as you'd expect. There was no real downside to any of that. It really was just kind of like the pacing of the comics that was kind of an issue now and then. It felt like it was either very rushed or very slowed down in areas it didn't have to be changed up at all. We didn't have to miss battles. We didn't have to really spend our time just half an entire issue of just walking. I felt like there were some other options that could have been done. But overall, it's okay. I have started to make a list of like where we're going to put all the comic issues by themselves with everything. And if you look at all of them put together for when it comes to Hollows, I have some that are very, very good. For instance, there's one chapter, I believe, of Hollows that is like an S-tier chapter. It's like very, very well done. And then there's like one or two that are pretty far down on like, I think C or D. I don't think there's any really bad chapters that would make me say this is a bad telling. Even the parts that I didn't like, they're like, it's okay, I see what they're going for, so, okay. But, yeah, overall, when you condense them all and, like, put them all in one area, it would be, like, middle of the road, like, maybe a B or a C. But there are some chapters that very much bring it really high up in my view, and then there's some that really just lower it and make me just not really want to read it again. Again, I've done so much involving Hollows with the story when it comes to making other characters' videos, or referencing it, or talking about the comics, where I've gone through this story many, many times. I've delved deep into it many, many times. I have either taken bits of it constantly, or I have read the entire thing and did a deep viewing of it all, an in-depth breakdown of what's going on many, many, many times. It is probably the most read story out of the entire Gears of War comics that I have read. It would probably go this one. I've read Hivebusters quite a lot also. And then it would probably go in with just the one-offs. There's a lot of one-offs that have a lot of information. And then probably like Rise of Rom, and then you have like everything else. Baron I don't touch on that much because that's a lot of Alex Brand, and I haven't covered Alex a lot, which we're going to. But yeah, it's okay. When you've read it as much as I have, you don't really have a lot of parts you really want to reread unless it's like really kick-ass like with Barrick. But it's okay. I don't want to discredit like the writers or artists or the people who enjoy it. It's okay. Hollows is fine. It's like you're middle of the road. So that's going to do it. I want to thank everyone for watching. Thank everyone for making things possible. Thank the patrons for making things possible. When we come back, we're going to continue the comic series. And at the very end of everything, once again, when we finish all the comics, we will do an overview of the comics in general. And we'll kind of just break down everything. We'll probably mention Hollows once more there, because Hollows just always makes an appearance whenever I talk about something. So that'll do it. I love you all to death. I'll see you in the next one. Later!